Okay, I guess it's recording. Recording. All right. So, hey everyone, back for another episode of Shtajio's vlog. I'm Henry Thurlow.
Arthell Isom.
And look, it's Arthell. Arthell is back
Yeah.
after how long? What is this? Like over a month, I'm sure at least.
Yeah, it's like MIA, man. Sorry about that, everyone. I would read the comments and a few people were like, "Where's Arthell? When's Arthell coming back?" So appreciate everyone's concern and interest in things that we've been so busy recently.
Stephen
Um,
Stephen held the fort down for the last
yeah,
like
yeah,
4 or 5 episodes, but I know we can't talk about specific stuff we're working on, all under NDA and everything, but
yeah.
generally, how have you been, Arthel? You've been all right?
Oh
You
no,
taking
yeah,
care of yourself?
like you
You're not
just
overworking, right? You're not like dying.
yeah, dying. You're not dying. You're not dying. Not dead into this, but definitely, we're working pretty hard. We have yeah, some pretty cool projects coming out this year, and so because of that, yeah, we've just been kind of doing a lot of kind of production art and art direction, and trying to make sure we get you guys some interesting things this year, as well as doing CEO stuff. So trying to line up our other productions and yeah, so but it's good. Everything's good.
All right. Well, that's good to hear. Yep. So this episode I figured would be nice and simple. I don't know if it'll be super long. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But just answer a few questions. We've actually had a handful of questions in the last handful of vlog posts that we've done. So we always end these with like, hey, if you have questions, post below. So, okay, this is the episode where we go back and we answer some of those.
Mm.
So let's just start. Um, an episode or two ago. I'll say the name, but if I mess up on the pronunciation, I'm sorry. Andrew Huang asked, "How often are you able to use reference? I'm in animation school right now in the U.S." And we're always encouraged to get reference before animating anything. In Japan, do animators have time to shoot or find reference for their shots they're working on? I'll answer as an animator. Arthel can answer as a background artist. Well, you've been out for so long, Arthel. How about you take it first? Background artists,
I
do
go
they
first.
use
Okay.
reference? When do they get the reference? When do they use it, etc.?
Mhm. Yeah, we do use references, and I think that there is one part of the process that we don't do, which is normally like the whole concept stage. I know that in the Western animation, things like that, Western artists would do like color keys and a whole lot of like concept art before they actually start painting the backgrounds. Background animators in Japan, we don't have time to do that. So it's like we just essentially just paint the background, and what you get, what we paint is what shows up on TV. But but we do get references to kind of use while we're painting, and so we and yeah, we use all different things. Of course, Google, you use the internet and find interesting um, reference photos and images, and then there's lots of books, and I think a lot of background artists, like, we love collecting books and things like that. So we find in Japan they have a series of books which are environment specific, and so like the whole book is just, for example, one of the books is schools, and it's all types of schools all over Japan, and then it has like close up of objects in the school and things like that. So we use books like that, um, depending on what kind of environment we're about to paint. And so we do definitely use references, and of course we're always encouraged. Well, I encourage our artists here, and then when I was working, we'd always try our best to just be very observant. So we also consider that the next type of reference, particularly for background artists or environment artists. So just always taking in things and really paying attention to, you know, the natural environment outside, and because that's another reference, right?
Yeah, for animators, I everyone uses reference, but I don't know if it's the same reference as is used in the West. In the West, I know that artists and illustrators and even animators, they have like little thumbnails of different like collages and images and faces cut out and stuff for when they're drawing the character, they put it next to their, on the side of their screen, and then they constantly just reference photos and stuff, which ends up with, making really great illustrations and everything. I haven't seen that so much in anime. And then similarly, people don't really record themselves. Sometimes what you do is like you stand up and kind of act it out yourself. Like I do see people like, like turning their heads and stuff like that. It's not as animated as like old Disney animators or current Disney animators, maybe. When you see videos of like the 9 old men, they're like looking in a mirror and like if they're animating Goofy, they're like like they're acting it so much. I don't see that level of acting around the anime studios, but a little bit, you act it out a little bit. And then people do have YouTube videos open. I see that a lot. So people are watching video reference, live action and animation reference from YouTube when there's something that they want. When it's like an animal running, like they'll look that up. I don't think, again, it's as like constantly like looking and studying as Western studios, but yeah, you definitely watch it. You definitely need inspiration. I recently we animated the Pokemon episode, and there was 2 unicorns, Pokemon Ponyta. And before animating that, like I had to look at some horses running reference, because I've never animated a horse running. Like I can't off the top of my head do that at all. So I referenced both live action horses running, and I went back to The Last Unicorn, which is like a favorite movie of mine, and saw how they animated it. So yeah, I took, whatever reference I could before jumping into a sequence. Next question. Let's see. There's one that's like super specific for just me as an animator. Let me do this other one. So on Instagram by Josh Hamister, he asked, have you guys discussed the editorial process? No, I don't think so. So as an editor that's worked on commercials and title sequence projects that start as rough animatics, I'm curious how different it is in anime. Do you guys storyboard and then let the editor do an animatic and director supervision and update it, et cetera, et cetera? So my answer to that, and then I'll kick it over to Arthell for your experience, but my experience is that in Japanese anime, the editor can mess with stuff, and does, and extend and shorten sequences later on in the process during the editing phase, but usually how it's written in the storyboards and in the first run of animatic is pretty much how Japanese anime productions proceed forward. It might be different with some feature films, Hosoda Mamoru films or Ghibli films, because they're working on just one project. They might have leeway to be like, hey, let's extend this, let's change this, because you're just focusing on one thing for like a year or two. But for TV anime, where it's like next episode, next episode, next episode, if the storyboards say this is going to be 3 seconds, this one's going to be 5 seconds, this one's going to be 2 seconds and a half, generally you go through the whole production just like that. And then at the very end, a little editing tweaking, but you kind of stick with it. Arthell, what do you think?
No, yeah. But, everything you said is correct. That yeah, the Japanese industry and the Western industry is totally, the process is just different. I think in the West, like Henry was saying, we have everyone has a little bit more leeway, and like kind of just with with every step in the process, right? Where it's kind of constantly adjusting things. And the Japanese process is very decided, like once you kind of put something down, that's pretty much it. I think for the editorial, at the editorial stage, that for animators in Japan, most of the editing is done in the storyboard phase, where it's like they're just adjusting the timing there. If they want to move shots around, make them shorter, they try their best to do it and the actual storyboard. And then once they get it to the editors for timing, that whatever was in the storyboard is essentially what you see. For us, like we do a little. I think we're always like mix, like we kind of mix the Western style with the Japanese style. So I think Henry likes to kind of use like right, like I think Henry really decides everything in storyboard, and then editing is that's it. Like I'm more of like I do kind of like to kind of mess around with editing a lot, and once we get to the editing phase, like I'm kind of sometimes I'll just cut stuff out or make things shorter or play around with that a little bit more. But yeah.
Yep.
Thanks.
Next
Yeah.
question. So Seth Clemens had a ton of questions, too many to answer. We ask for people's questions, but please do not ask like 30 questions in one
To
post
make a
because
book of
we'll never
questions.
get around to them. But I went through and I picked two questions that I thought were pretty good. So one is I have a few questions about the Japan and anime and manga industry. Can a North American, like foreigner, or anyone who's non-Japanese, become a mangaka? Can one become highly established in Japan and even get a deal with Shonen Jump? So Arthell, what are your feelings on that?
Man, I feel so. I know of two artists and or maybe three, and they're all three of them were foreigners from the States, and they were trying to break into the manga industry here. I think one of them actually did work in the manga industry. They didn't produce their own book; they worked under a manga, like similar to that. That's like the normal Japanese process, right? You have like the main manga artist, and then
Yeah.
he has his helpers, and so or his assistants, helpers, his assistant artists. But so they did. They were an assistant artist, but I don't know of any artists who've actually successfully made their own book here, right? I mean, I don't know.
There is
You've
like
read,
one or two. I'm gonna blank on the name now. So before I even butcher the name or just totally get it wrong, I know that there are, like, if you type in like non-Japanese like manga or foreigner manga, like there is one or two people that have done it. Um, but I don't think that they were probably for smaller publications than this guy's talking about. They made something that ended up being one or two tankobon, right? Volumes of
yeah,
manga, which is an amazing accomplishment, which is obviously awesome. Uh,
yeah, yeah.
but in terms of getting signed for Shonen Jump, well, look, I mean, our studio's proof, like there's going to be a first for everything, right? So someday there will be, right? You could say
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
stay positive about it. But
yeah,
realistically, my answer is, don't aim for that. Probably what I would aim for is to be like the best comic book artist that I can, right? Like make your own comic slash manga slash whatever you want to call it, but just it's like a great book, it's a great read and great art, right? And then sell it to whoever you can sell it to. If it doesn't sell to Shonen Jump, then maybe it'll sell to Dark Horse Comics or Marvel Comics or somewhere, or
yeah.
or some European publication. Like, what's wrong with any of that? Nothing's wrong with any of that, right? So
Mm.
I would say don't be so obsessed with like I want to make manga for a great manga publishing company. That's
Yeah.
that you're setting yourself up for probably failure if that's just your
Yeah.
mindset. So like
Well,
really,
I'm always a little more. I try to be optimistic, so I'd say if you want to do it, like definitely do it. Like try your best and just go. But like Henry said, like I don't know, have a plan B. In Japan, the industry starting to change a little bit more, where they're starting to be a little bit more open to Westerners in their industry in general. So a lot of I do know that there are a lot of manga art schools, right? Like technical schools that teach kind of the art of manga. And you can, so I've seen a lot of foreigners in these schools now.
I
And
bet if there ever is a foreigner signed to Shonen Jump or something like that, it'll be someone that comes out of one of those schools. The
yeah,
resume
yeah,
of wow, you came to Japan, learned the language, and then studied under Japanese teachers will be a selling point that'll make them go,
yeah,
okay, you
because
proved
it is
yourself.
very
Try to make one.
specific. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Japanese
So
manga has like specific rules of how they set their, for the koma and things like that.
yeah.
So, yeah, definitely that would like Henry said, like that would be a you know, so I'd suggest that like going to like a manga school out here, learning their process, and then going forward that way.
One more question from Seth. If a manga has been dropped or someone stops making their manga, can another mangaka buy the rights to it and then make it themselves and continue it? Uh, that's paraphrased from what he wrote, but that's the question. So as just a fan, because I don't know the details of the manga industry, as just a fan and a viewer and a reader of Japanese anime and manga, my perception is that that doesn't happen. Unlike the West, where it's like Marvel owns this character, Iron Man, right? And so like you might have your Iron Man story, but whatever you, the writer slash artist, do, it's not really your creation. So someone else is going to make more of that later on, right? Or even if it's not something as big as like a Marvel owned thing, it's in the West, I think it's a little bit more lenient, like, oh, someone else is picking up their story and continuing it, right? Like there's publishers that have rights and et cetera, et cetera. In Japan, like the mangaka really, it's like they own their baby, kind of. Like Berserk is one that comes to mind when I read this question. I'm a huge fan of Berserk. I love Berserk. I've always loved Berserk. The Berserk manga is right behind me for those who are familiar with it. Uh, he's really slow recently with the new chapters coming out, so everyone worries, like, is he going to continue it, is he going to stop it, is he done, like nothing's come out for half a year. If he decides I'm not continuing this, no one else is going to continue it. Like the publisher isn't going to young what is it, Young Animal, I guess, is that the one? Young Animal is the magazine that publishes that. And Young Animal is not going to be like, well, he wasn't delivering it, so we decided to find another person. If he doesn't continue it, then it just ends at volume 42 or whatever volume they're at, right? And forever it's just on the shelf, like, and then the creator never continued it. And that is what'll happen from my experience. Yeah.
Yeah.
Arthell.
Oh no, yeah, yeah. I think you're right. Like, I don't know of any manga that's been kind of continued by another artist out here. It's a little bit different um, in the animation stage when like manga becomes animation. Now there are other writers sometimes, like and it's kind of back and forth because like I don't think the manga because the mangaka do own their rights to their stories. There's like a little conflict there. I don't think the mangaka appreciate it when the writers change their story and things, but there are some animations that veer off and like the directors or whatever wanted it. Maybe the story ended and they wanted to continue the story. So that happened with Naruto, right? So Boruto, I don't like they just kind of
Right,
created a
right.
whole new
Well,
thing.
I think that the mangaka always has to sign off on pretty much everything. Not if you not the changing of the story and say, so what they need to sign off for, in my understanding of it from what I've seen, is they need to sign off that like this studio can make this thing, right? The rights holders and publishers can't just decide that, and then the mangaka wakes up one day and goes, oh my god, there's a new
Yeah,
OVA series of my show, of my thing, right? Like the Dragon Ball Z creator, Akira Toriyama, isn't going to wake up and be like, there's another Dragon Ball movie coming out. Well, I didn't know this.
yeah,
Toei and the rights holders didn't inform me. That'll never, ever, ever happen, right? But I think once he gives the okay, I give the okay to this, and I accept that this is the extent of my role in it, and then signs off on that, then it goes off to whoever, right? So then if there's filler episodes, or if the plot kind of veers off, the mangaka can make requests and even demands, but whether those are totally fulfilled is, I think, up to the director specifically and then the studio. And so, yeah, like, Rurouni Kenshin had a third season that wasn't related to anything. Tokyo Ghoul's second season went in a totally different direction than the manga. I'm sure that the mangaka were aware of this. Hey, we're thinking about going in a different direction, or,
yeah,
we're running out of source material. We're going to do this with it. I'm sure it was something they heard, and then they said, okay, I'll allow that.
yeah,
But then exactly what was made, I think even then the mangaka saw as it aired on TV.
yeah,
Right?
yeah,
Because sometimes you see
yeah,
little comments like that by the mangaka, either on Twitter or in the magazines, like, ooh, this original saga looks really neat. I think the Naruto guy posted that sometimes, like, ooh, this one was a good one. Because even he's like
yeah,
watching it weekly, like, I don't know what they're doing with their original
yeah,
stuff
because it doesn't
here.
know, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So sometimes you get the mangaka who are happy with what's happening, and then there are the nightmare cases where the mangaka just man they go to war with the studios too, and then that's when the animations get pulled off. We're not going to mention any names of which shows that's happened with, but there are
What
cases
I
where
think that whatever contract is done, right? So like I know one who, I mean, it's all public now. Yeah, even, you know what? I see the poster image, but it's actually a Jump manga that I never read. I know that there was one, and I even forget who animated it, but it started going off in its own direction at like episode 15, and it was a 50 episode show. And so like most of the show was totally original. And that creator came out and was like angry about it. Like right when it happened, I think he came out angry about it. It didn't cancel the show. The show still got its 50 episode run.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So like they were just frustrated with it, but then it ended. So, and then
Oh, okay,
obviously they didn't go and allow,
They
so
couldn't, they couldn't continue.
it was probably a really popular series, as almost all Jump things are. But he's like, no, you know, like I don't care that you
couldn't get the rights for the
or second season. I
season.
refuse now. So they can always do that, which is actually why some really popular manga never became anime. And now I'm going to blank on any names, but I've read before, like people have been like, oh, you know what? Oh, what's the name? There's one manga with a, hold on, with like a green haired little girl. Yotsuba. It's called Yotsuba, which is like I think the same person that made was it Azumanga Daioh made this. If I'm not mistaken, hopefully you weebs out there will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I'm right about that. And but that person, like I'm pretty sure, said, I don't want any more of my stuff ever becoming an anime. So even though this is a super popular manga and everyone's like, where's the anime? The mangaka's just like, never. Just because I say, like, I don't want it.
Yeah. Some manga, they just want they want people just to read their material.
Last question. I don't know how much Arthell can answer this one, but I'll ask a background related thing or something after this. But the question is from Van Kill, and he says, can you do an episode where you talk about what Westerners call Sakuga and what it means to you guys, and how do you decide what to animate on 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s? The first part of that, Sakuga, honestly, to me, is just the Japanese word for the animated part of the sequence. That's literally what it means. Like in our meetings, it'll be like, what part of this is a background and what part of this is Sakuga? So literally anything that is a character moving, or even if it's still, whatever the character element of your sequence is Sakuga, right? Where the person has to draw it. Recently, Sakuga has like become a word that means wild animation, I think, where it's like, oh, look at the Sakuga, look at the wild animation of this cut, right? Like it's really moving to the left and then moving to the right, and then there's things happening and 3 layers of effects animation. Great Sakuga. Well, that is true. It is great Sakuga. That sentence actually works in Japanese also, and it does mean, like, you know, the art quality of the whole sequence looks great, but it doesn't mean like wicked fast animation sequence like I think Westerners are starting to call it. It just means like the artistry of this is quite nice. So it could be a still image, like it could be a tome. We call tome like the still shots, like a character's just looking off to the left and it's still for 5 seconds, right? If that is a beautiful drawing and they have really nice background and cool compositing effects over the whole thing, so it's just a still drawing, people will still say, wow, this is beautiful Sakuga in Japanese, right? Because it's a really nice looking scene. As for how to pick 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s, the super quick answer to that is okay, so honestly, you can use whatever you want whenever you want, just as long as it looks good. That's why people mess around with it and test it, right? And that's why digital animation is actually better than traditional in some way. Like I love my old cell animation and stuff, but currently people can test their animation right in front of them when they use the computer to animate. And one of the good effects of that is that you can test messing around with 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s and seeing like, well, if I, made these sequences much quicker put together, it'll look like this. And then if I separated them, it'll look like this. So do whatever you want is the right answer. But just to give you a quick advice, generally speaking, and the Animator Survival Kit kind of mentions this too, even. They just talk about 1s and 2s only, but it works between 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s. Motions that are like really close together, and so therefore probably moving slowly, you can reduce down to twos and threes and fours, no problem. You don't need those to ever be on ones or even twos necessarily, right? Because the drawings are already super close. And it's supposed to be moving slowly. Arthell, you're getting sleepy there. You all right? All right?
Yeah, man. It's sleepy.
Motions that are moving really quickly and where the drawings are spaced very far from each other, you could put on twos or ones, because if the animation is just my head turning from here to here, it doesn't like your eye is going to really easily be able to like see the path of the motion, even if it's on like threes or fours and kind of jittery. It doesn't really matter because you're very easily following this. But if one character is here and he's jumped, like it's a full body character, so here's a character's full body, and one frame is here and then the next frame is here because he's moving quickly across the screen, you don't want it to hold here and then boom, suddenly here, and then boom, suddenly here. That'll stand out to your eye. You want this to really just smoothly move as quickly as possible. So far spread out drawings, put it on ones, and it'll work better. So generally that's how you want to do it. Drawings that are spaced really far apart, put it on ones. It'll make it go really fast, but that'll make the animation look the best. Whereas drawings that are really close together, you can hold them for a bit longer and get away with it. It's fine. I guess, Arthell, is there anything, is there a background equivalent to that? Is there some like, is there some, what even would be a background equivalent of that? I guess, is there some trick to, background painting that background artists, might find neat or helpful?
Yeah, that's a little tricky. I think, of course, there's animated backgrounds, but the animators tend to do that, so background artists don't do that. And then the rules of timing would be the same.
I have a question that's maybe slightly related a little bit. If you have to paint a really big background because it's panning, right? So like you get the camera work, and like your first frame is here, and then the character is going to jump through the sky. So the second frame is way up here, and it's going to pan through all of this material, right? Do you paint the same amount of detail in the whole thing, or because this is panning across quickly, do you let the in-between area be rough?
Hold on, sorry, 1 second. 大丈夫です。ありがとうございます。すいません。Sorry. Okay. So yeah, whenever we're doing large pans, or so there's a few different types of pans, right? So there's the ones where although they're all different types of pans, but the way that we calculate the timing is the same, I guess. So what we normally do is we decide how far the character is moving. And so like how many meters, right? Like how many meters the distance is. And then, so once you know how far the character is going, then how long is it supposed to take for them to get from here to there? And then that determines how big of the pan is supposed to be. And nowadays, like, so before we used to really calculate it, right? So we would we would measure. So we would look at the storyboard and we say, okay, this is a 5-second cut. The character is going from, I don't know, like from this tree to that tree, and they're about like the tree is like whatever 50 meters apart in real world measurement, right? 50 meters apart. So okay, how long is it going to take for him to get from here to there? And then we would calculate that timing, and then so based off of how many frames are in there, and then but now what they do is because everything's digital, right? Like they just kind of put it they put it on the
start him here, end him here.
And then you just kind of play around with it until it looks good. Play with the speed.
When you have a long pan, just to ask the one question real quick, when you have a really long pan, even if it pans across quickly, do you paint the same amount of detail in that area that it's panning across quickly?
So no, like not really. I guess it depends on how, like the level, the resolution, and the level of detail that you're going to see. But like now, things are in 4K and stuff like that. So sometimes, like I can see now. I remember when I was painting backgrounds, um, you know, like I don't know, 10 years ago, or whatever. There was hardly any detail, right? We would at that time I was painting on paper, and we would kind of blur out the in between. But like now, like you see in animation when the characters are running, it looks like it's like the actual background is moving, at
Mhm.
that fast pace. Um, so I think, and that could just be because of the higher resolution and things, or maybe just you know the animation these days, the backgrounds are just more detailed, just because it's possible with digital animation. So yeah, like don't. I think that really is up to the director, because you can. It's the effect is still the same, right? Like you can. It looks interesting if what you see in between is blurry, but some directors might want to see everything, right? So,
All right. Well, I think that's good for all the questions for now. So, everyone, if you have more questions, post below. And I can't promise that we'll get to them next week, but we do go back. And if it's an interesting question at some point, we will answer it. So, it's nice to have you back, Arthell. And
let's be back.
see you guys
All
next
right.
time. Shtajio.
Daiji.